Here.
Mrs. Wiemet?
Present.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Strelacci?
Here.
Mr. Zire?
Here.
Dr. Giordano?
Here. Motion to move to confidential session for personnel matters. Resolved that the board meet in confidential session for the purpose of discussing a personnel matter, and be it further resolved that, okay, thank you, Mark, that the matters discussed in confidential session be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality no longer exists. A correction, thank you, Dr. Zimmer. We'll be going into confidential on personnel matters and attorney-client privilege. All those in favor? Aye. We're in closed session, no action will be taken. We're just gonna go in the back, should be about 15 minutes. Not even.
Part of it is. trick.
I think we just go this way and then go back this way.
I was a Boy Scout. Very prepared. Keeps my mind at rest.
Good to know.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I don't know why I'm that. I do that. I thought maybe there's a few more people. No, maybe we should
Right there.
Yes.
Motion to come back into closed session?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, we're back. Thank you everyone for coming. This is a special meeting for the Board of Education to interview for the open seat on the Board of Education. I'd like to thank the candidates for submitting their resumes and their letters of interest. The process that we're going to utilize is we're going to have all the candidates. We have 4 candidates live, 1 candidate via Zoom or Google Meet. We're going to ask the candidates that are live to go back into the conference room in the back. We will have Ms. Jones and Mr. Creepy call you in one at a time. You will sit at the desk right in front of us, and we will go round robin. Each board member will ask you a question. We'll take our notes. At the end of the interview process, we will ask you all to stay seated in here. We then, as a board, will go in closed session, discuss, come to a consensus of the board member, come back out, and someone will nominate a person, and then we will vote. And once that happens, prior to the next board meeting, Ms. Jones will reach out to you, you'll be sworn in, and we'll go forward from there. And I'll let Mr. Zinnemer explain the length of the term that you are going to be appointed for.
Good evening, everybody. So tonight you will be appointed presumably if the board can come to a consensus, and you will serve through January of 2022, which is the board's organization meeting. So you're going to serve from presumably on or about tonight through January of 2022. The balance of the term will be on the November ballot, so there's 1 year left on the term. So if you're interested in continuing on for the balance of this particular term, there will be the 1 year seat on the November ballot. So in November, there's going to be the regular three-year seats, and then one year seat, which is going to be this. So you're basically going to serve for about 6 months or so. Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to ask the candidates to follow Ms. Jones into the back, or Mr. Creepy. Mr. Creepy, raise your hand. Right back there. And we're going to start with the candidate who's online first.
Are we all set with him, Ryan?
You should be ready.
I see he's on the screen there, yeah.
This is Mr. Edmund Canoe.
Can you hear us, Mr. Canoe? Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, sorry. We can't hear you, sir. Hold on. Oh, Mr. Creepy, please let the door open.
Need the mic here?
I think it's just something from audio-wise.
Is your mic unmuted, sir? Is your microphone muted, sir?
Ryan, do you want to see if he could log in on this one here?
Give us 1 second. Technical difficulties.
Let's see.
Your volume's up. I'm not sure what's... First kind of, we'll just go down and back and forth, and the next can we'll start with this.
some reason. No, I'm not hearing you.
Maybe she logs in and tries back.
Can you try maybe logging back in? We switched her over to another laptop and maybe give that a
Can
try.
you just pass your laptop around?
He's away on business, so.
Would you send a Google Meet link?
The other way we can do it is just put them on speakerphone,
We might have
have
to.
them call in,
Yeah,
my phone.
yeah.
One last time, see if you can log in. Sometimes if you log out, you click back in on the volume and come back.
Elected as an individual, not as not your job.
When did you say?
It's usually the third week of July.
I have to get my citizenship. So that's correct.
Do we have a cell phone?
Maybe do them last, have the tech guys look at it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's like, he's with us.
Yeah, he said, I
So
could hear
let's
you
see,
all and see
accept.
faces.
No,
I
that's.
can have my sniper silver, I went to 3 hospitals.
Hello.
Can you hear us now?
He said he can hear us. We can't hear him. Is your volume on your computer?
Unfortunately.
Why don't you just tell him to call a phone number, Anthony? You want to give him your phone number or put him on speakerphone?
I'm gonna put a chat in there asking him to just call myself.
He can hear you. I think he
You
can
can
hear us.
hear us. I'll say it out loud.
Yeah, want to write down a piece of paper and show it to him on the screen?
Had the pen out there.
Certain.
We're gonna give you a phone number, Mr. Canoe, that you can call in.
I was gonna say, you know, this is not good.
I won't recognize it.
Okay, I'll wait.
Can I get?
I won't recognize it. I won't hang out.
Send him a text when I call you.
Sorry, I can't answer right now.
Can't talk right now.
What are you gonna have to do?
In the middle of the meeting.
I'm gonna put
Do you
the
see
speaker
that
right
that phone number in the chat? Yeah, if you can call that number.
Maybe you should ask them all the questions then.
No, I think if everyone can hear us, you can respond. It's loud enough in here.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Canoe? Yes, I can. This is Anthony Giordano. I'm gonna put you, the mic is, can you speak into the, see, make sure everyone can hear you?
Yeah, I have you on speaker, so I hope, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's perfect.
Okay, I do apologize for this. Just a word of caution, I'm in South America, Guyana, and since I've been here, they've been having power outages like fairy lights.
So it's been a problem.
And the internet is kind of not reliable, so I do apologize for this, and I'm sorry that my trip was already booked before they sent me back, and I had no choice but to be displayed.
That's absolutely okay. So we're gonna start, we're gonna have Mr. Strelacci start, and we're just gonna go round robin. Each board member's gonna ask you a question, sir.
No problem.
Mr. Canoe, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, if you should become a board member, what 2 goals would you like to see implemented by the board?
Can you repeat for me again?
Yes, if you should be put on this board, what 2 board goals would you like to see implemented?
What 2 board goals that you would, that I see would be implemented, is that the question?
That's correct.
That's correct. The couple of the things that I'm looking at is diversity in our teaching staff that you want, of something that I would like to see in our board in Mount Olive. The other thing is that diversity inclusive for students. And one of the things that I would like to see happen is, for example, we're now a diverse community, as you know, and I would like to see something not really the curriculum or whatever. Like, for example, we have in our school system in Canada, we have diversity day where an hour or so for that day we have students from different cultures do a presentation of, so that the reason for doing that is that so the other students understand where they're coming from, and you have this better understanding of how we can, work with each other and, to better help each other out. That is two of the stuff that I would like to see happening in our school system at this time.
Super. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kevin is going to ask the second question.
Sure.
Yes, if you could change one thing in our district, what thing would it be?
Can you repeat me, please?
If you could change one thing in our district, what would it be and why?
If I could change one thing in your district, what is the change and why? That's an open-ended question. It's a big question, but there's so many things there's no one thing that you can change. One of the things that I am not into the system right now to see how the functioning of the board. I know our board policies that you have is for like fiscal responsibility for implementing policies to ensure that we have, the education system, that the challenges are met, and we inspire the students to learn and a safe environment. I would like to see some safety stuff or maybe not in a curriculum setting at least, or maybe lectures or something happen in our schools on safety. That's one, and how we should treat other students, how we should treat our community, because ideally, the board of directors are responsible to ensure that, the policies are in place, that you have the product of the policies and stuff you set in place are the students who will be the better citizens of the world. That's part of the mission. And I would like to have more inclusiveness in sporting activity, access to sporting activities for all diverse communities, equal opportunity for education and training. I would like also to see a skills training setting, maybe not as a curriculum or a subject matter into the school system, because sometimes we have in a school, it's all academic and there's no technical training. I know there's other schools that do that, but we can start even at a high school level to implement that kind of technical skills training, so that students who would opt not to go to further education university can at least find some other trade or whatever, and you set them up to that level so they can go into that setting and be meaningful and good citizens of the world, and in our community.
Thank you.
If I answer your question directly.
Yeah, I think that worked. And you touched base upon this in the last question you answered, but what do you see as the board's role and responsibility in the district?
Well, I see the board responsibility to ensure that first that the policies and procedures are in place. We really partner with the school system. We ensure that the mandates of the district is carried out. We ensure that they are fiscal responsible enough to ensure that it's all about money as well, that it is spent wisely and in the right curriculum or right project or facility development, so the students they have the necessary tools that they can work with. And I'm not saying that the board is a big policeman of the group, but certainly that we should be the board will be able to monitor to ensure that the deliverables are done according to the mandate that is given.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Canoe. What kind of commitment in time and energy do you think a board member needs to devote in order to be an effective Board of Education member?
First thing is you've got to be dedicated to the mission. That's one of the things. You have to have a passion for what you're getting into. For example, when in this same country that I am right now, we had I'm always in for education. I did tutoring at our University of Guyana here for students, and my wife and I saw a need for skills training in some of the low-income area places. What we did is that I approached the Inter-American Development Bank, UNESCO, and the University of Guyana to have a skills training center in which we had, I got computers from different companies that we did computer training. I enrolled through the IDB program to have tailoring classes being done for people at seamstress, and it kind of worked. And I worked with the churches at that time to ensure that we have that done. Now it takes much more than your regular work. It takes sometimes hours. After work, you go there to make sure things are done. You ensure that you visit sites. It's much more deeper, and it has to do with the passion that you would have, that you bring with it. So to say, it's much more heavily involved in what you really want to do. So in terms of time and energy, it's not a 9 to 5 is your regular work. It could be after 5 to 10, 12, or whatever. Depends on how the needs arise and what the programs are. Now, I believe that you should be involved in every aspect of what is going on. Like, for example, if there's a big event going on, like sporting activities and stuff like that, you should go there to lend your support so people see that you're visually there to give that kind of support. It shows much more than, you're just listening and walk away from a meeting and that's about it. So it's total involvement. You've got to be immersed in it. So that's how I see it, and I've served on boards before. I've served in church settings, and you give it all. So that's what you do. Once you get into it, you just give it all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, this is Dr. Gales, and my question to you is, and you touched upon it in your previous answer, but can you expand a little bit on your volunteer activities, current or past?
Pardon me?
Can you share with the board your volunteer activities, whether they're current or past volunteer activities?
Actually, I was a member of the Lions Club. I was the secretary of the Lions Club, and I work with a church organization. Right now, at my company that I work with, it's a not-for-profit, Northwest New Jersey Community Action Program. I actually go out to do stuff in the neighborhood of Phillipsburg. I actually volunteered with the police department there that we can go clean up the parks, etc. And wherever I'm called, like distributing food, stuff, I do that. I work in the activity of the church. I'm not so big and mighty that I can't do stuff. You deliver food to people. The last Christmas I took it on my own. I'm not supposed to go to deliver Christmas hampers and baskets to people in Pakistan, and gifts and toys, and those are some of the stuff that I've done. Moving to America, I have not got into the Lionism yet because of the fact that I wasn't sure where we really want to settle down. But now I'm in Mount Olive there for the past 6 years. I'm trying to get back into it. But in Canada, there's all the soup kitchens in Canada. I volunteer in church activities, the Lion Club activities, all that. And that's something that I've been missing really since I moved here, apart from what I'm doing currently now, to get more deeply involved in something that I can make a meaningful contribution to.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Canoe. Liz Weemat. My question has to do with the board as far as what you would consider as one of the most important issues that we are facing currently. I'm thinking about that question about, just pick one that you think would be the most important, and how would you utilize your skills to help with that?
you said I didn't hear, it's
Maybe better speaking that. Has to come out.
How's this, Mr. Canoe, a little better?
yes, this is better, thank you.
All right. What would you consider is the most important issue facing the board today? Like, just think of just one issue that you think would be very important. And utilizing whatever skills you have, how do you think you can help with that?
One of the challenges I think would have diversity in the teaching department of the schools. And that has been a challenge because as you look around, there's not much people of color, etc., in this system. I would be one because as a man of color to at least pave a way and to try to see how we can help the school system to recruit a diverse population in terms of the teaching department, the components, and you know the work of all the schools are doing, that we can have a diversity in it. That would be one of my thing in you know, to make sure that is done, and then also equality, you know, in terms of pay, etc. That is something that, you know, that is one of the challenges we have right now in our school system. So as a man of color, I am willing to put myself out to ensure that we can, whatever help I can, to attract the necessary, of course, skillful talents, not, you know, people that I know that are qualified to encourage them to come into our system to help us with that. That's one of our challenges.
All right, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Canoe, this is Bill Robinson. My question is, we are looking at a reduction in state aid over the next 5 years. What area would you ask the administration to focus on as they plan to address the reduced funding?
It depends on what the area of funding is. One of the things that I always believe in cost-saving methods, that we can implement cost-saving methods, and yet not just, but the deliverable in terms of what we set out to do, our mission is completed. But if we can look at the different avenue of reducing costs. So whatever we set out to do, you can't cut the service, but at least to the students. But we can look at that other area of cost savings. I've actually done quite a few cost saving exercises in my tenure with Olive BoE as a controller and general manager, which we saved a lot of money by creative ways. But we did deliver the services. I've done that to some of the nursing home chains that I worked with in Canada, that we saved tremendously. 1 year actually, we saved $350,000 in a year. And it took a lot of things, because what I did is that I looked at all aspects of the budget and see where the areas that we could save costs, but not quality, we don't compromise quality. And I examined those stuff as a financial accountant and certified forensic accountant. I have a different set of eyes. I look at things in a different set of eyes. And I'm always with saving costs. Even my company right now, where I started a project of going into more technology and getting rid of people. You know, people cost a lot of money. So we're now improving our systems in terms of getting stuff, scanning stuff, saving stuff, automating our AP system and everything else. So it really depends on what our projects are. But one of the things I would not do is compromise the service output of anything. But I always look at ways that we can cut costs internally in some of the other areas. So that is something that we can look at, and I cannot say directly what project, but if there's a funding cut in a special product, I would like to look at how our cost stuff is, how our cost is relative to the funding.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Canoe, this is Mr. Zire. Thank you for taking your time. So Ms. Wimet asked you a question about what was the most important issue that's challenging the board. I'd like to ask you, what do you feel is the most important issue with public education in New Jersey right now? Like, what problem are we facing?
In New Jersey, we schools that are overfunded per pupil and some are not, right? That's a big disparity in terms of cost per pupil in New Jersey, and that's a big problem, especially down in Trinity areas and some of the areas. What I would like to see is that we have all students across New Jersey have the same equal access to education as say Mount Olive. That is one of the things that is right now. I would like to see in New Jersey that we have the same caliber and capacity and expertise of the teachers that we have in Mount Olive across the state. I mean, that's what I would like to see, you know. It is a challenge, you know it is, but that is something that is worth looking into. I mean, we are fortunate that Mount Olive, our school system, is very highly rated. Some schools are not so fortunate, and we need to examine why. So that's across the state. I mean, that's what I see.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
So, Mr. Canoe, let me get you on the mic here. So what's gonna happen now, I'm gonna hang up the phone on you, and we're gonna ask you to unlink yourself, and then we're gonna interview the other four candidates. And when we're done, the board is gonna go in closed session and build a consensus, and then I will give you a call back, and have you come back on the way we did it now, so you can be present.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Mr. Creek, next candidate. I know. That was really small.
I know, I have okay, I have more bags. Okay.
I know, that was a total.
Ladies first.
So thank you, Ms. Rubin. The way it's going to go is the way we explained. We're going to start on this end with Mr. Zier. We're just going to go round robin, ask you questions, each board member, and then we'll listen to your answers. So, Mr. Zier, you're up first.
All right, so Ms. Rubin, thank you for your time and applying. You are a teacher, correct?
I am.
Okay, so what do you think is the most important issue or challenge that is of public education in New Jersey right now we're facing?
Well, I'm also, as a longtime educator, I left the classroom per se to pursue a career in educational mindfulness coaching. And a big part of the reason I did that was because of the rise in empathy epidemic, the rise in teacher burnout, and the rise in anxiety and suicide. So to me, mental health is a really big problem that I think needs to be addressed. And I am a huge proponent of educating not just the whole child, but also the whole educator as well, because I think that sustainability is something that we need to really address from a community perspective.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill Robinson. We're looking at a reduction in state aid over the next 5 years. What area would you ask the administration to focus on as they plan to address this reduced funding?
There's no right answer, unfortunately. And so it's one of those situations where I guess you guys deal with this all the time, that unfortunately you're not going to please everybody. And I don't feel as though I have a really good answer for that question. I think I would need to do some research in order to really kind of take a look at not just our budget, but also where money is being allocated and where, you know, funds could be potentially kind of taken away from to address that. I'm sorry, I wish I had a better answer.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. As both an educator and a parent, what would you consider is the most important issue currently facing? And utilizing the skills that you have as both a parent and educator, how would you help to address this one pressing issue that you feel is most important?
One pressing issue. So I am an an educator, obviously by trade, and I spent the majority of my time in elementary education. Currently, my children, I have a 3rd grader and a 5th grader at Sand Shore Elementary School. I love that we have so many wonderful opportunities for all of our marauders, and I would love to see a little bit less of a top-down and a little bit more of a bottom-up mentality in terms of kind of reinforcing and kind of putting some of these opportunities in the hands of the teachers who have the students for the longest amount of time. So students obviously spend a longer period of time in elementary schools, and they spend the most amount of time in that classroom with their classroom teacher. So giving those teachers the opportunities to make decisions and have that agency, or to be able to improve the agency for those kids. I think that it's really hard, and we used to joke in school about at what point in the year do you become the Charlie Brown teacher. Boys, and they hear wah, 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 wah. And so I think that teachers, especially elementary teachers, I know from my experience, we're always looking to mix it up a little bit and keep the kids on the edge of their seat. And so I would love to see sort of an allocation of some of that money and some of those different types of incentives like Genius Hour, like, you know, project learning, those different types of opportunities for kids to really kind of roll up their sleeves and learn about what they find interesting, right? Learning that there's more things to YouTube than just videos. Thank you. Thank you.
So my question is, can you share with the board your volunteer activities, whether they're current or past?
So as a teacher, I obviously, you know, spent a lot of time working with my students. I was very excited to be able to bring Girls on the Run to Randolph. And that was an amazing opportunity to be able to kind of be a coach and a teacher and a mentor, which I absolutely loved. As a parent, I am very much involved in the community, obviously on the SHSP, and my youngest is classified with learning disability, and so I am an active member on the CPEG committee as well. Both of my children are involved in sports and activities, so both my husband and I coach teams, and we are, you know, very much involved in all of the things, both academic as well as social as well. As a mindfulness teacher, I also do, at this point, free mindfulness classes for teachers in Mount Olive, and have had the opportunity of joining them via Google Meets to be able to share some mindfulness strategies for learners of all ages, which have been very well received.
Thank you.
Okay, what kind of commitment in time and energy do you think a board member needs to devote to be an effective Board of Education member?
I would imagine that, again, having never had that opportunity before, but I can tell you that it's definitely been one of my kind of lifetime goals. And so I was very fortunate to see this opportunity arise and the chance to kind of get a taste for what it's like to be on the Board of Education. So I think everything comes with balance. I am fortunate since leaving the classroom to run my own company, so therefore I do have flexibility in my schedule, and that was a big reason why I left the classroom, because I needed some more flexibility for my children, as well as to be involved in as a room parent and to be able to, you know, make it to those Halloween parades and all those fun things that parents love to do. So as a teacher, I know that flexibility is a huge piece, but I also think that balance is something that I came to kind of find through leaving the classroom. And so I don't have a specific number. Is that what you're looking for? No, just in general.
Yeah.
But I do know, obviously, that in addition to the monthly meetings, and then in addition to that, obviously, the work that goes into that, the research, the reading of the notes, all of those other things, in addition to just being out in the community and talking to people and hearing what others have to say, is something that, again, you can't necessarily put a number on that, but I do imagine that it is quite a commitment.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rubin. How are you tonight? So what do you see as the board's role and responsibility in the school district? The board.
Well, I mean, I think that you guys always put the students and the community first. And that's been my experience in being a member of not only the board, not the community, not just as a proud Mount Olive graduate, but also as a community member and a parent here in the district. You know, a long time ago, I stood before you with my son who was in kindergarten and his homework box, right? And saying, you know, at that time we still had half-day kindergarten, and he was coming home with what could have been, you know, hours of homework. And you guys were very responsive to that and really kind of listened. I also loved the fact that, you know, never once did I speak at a board meeting where I wasn't personally addressed by a Board of Education member who really kind of was listening. And so listening to the public, hearing their concerns, knowing what it is that is, you know, their biggest challenge and how we can help them to kind of bridge that gap, right? Because as parents, I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect. We obviously have the best of intentions for our children, but we don't always know what goes on during the school day. We don't always know what the curriculum is and the best of intentions. And so I really look at the Board of Education as being like a liaison that's always fighting for the rights of the students and obviously putting them first, but also kind of bridging that gap and helping to hear what the concerns are and the struggles and the challenges, not just of the students, as well as the teachers, but then also the parents as well, and really kind of being that liaison.
Thank you.
Ms. Rubin, as a product of one of the best educational systems in the state of New Jersey, what one thing would you change in Mount Olive and why? In our district, I should say, of Mount Olive.
I think that as an educator, I answer this more as an educator than a Mount Olive alumni, because I think that as an educator, I realize that just like we know, everything is in a pendulum, right? And the same is true about education. And so I went to school at Mount Olive High School when they had just closed the cosmetology wing and the cooking wing, right? And so there were still, you know, some kids who were really disappointed about that. And then I sit and listen to the, you know, conversations about whether or not they're going to do away with honors or the different types of tracks and classes that are offered to high school seniors. Now at this point, obviously, I'm not in that position, but I think that keeping lines of communication open so that people can feel heard. I think that the biggest challenge is, of course, communication. We live in a very overstimulating world. I am just as much to blame in terms of my emails overflowing and things just kind of falling off of our radar. I think there definitely needs to be more tangibility in terms of how people get their information. I personally love the fact that Dr. Zwicky goes live. I think that that was a big thing that I heard a lot of when we were trying to get full-day kindergarten, was this kind of mistrust in terms of the public and what was happening or what was happening behind closed doors. I think there's some misinformation that's out there in terms of how this actually does operate. And so I really feel like kind of sort of that open door policy, but that open lines of communication policy is not necessarily something that I struggle with, but I know a lot of people that I talk to do.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rubin, thank you for wanting to, and for the board, to come from it. You know, we get highly paid, so.
Yeah.
And you're gonna come from a teaching perspective now, to being a board member. So if that would be the case, what would you want to bring to the board in the form of 2 board goals?
Well, I've thought about this a lot, and I think that here we are so very fortunate for so many amazing programs and incentives and ideas and things that you already do extremely well. And again, I am always that person who says it's a good place to live. Like Mount Olive is an amazing place to live. I am grateful for the opportunity. To be honest, it would really just be a matter of sort of building onto the things that you have already done an amazing job of. I think that this kind of going back to Mr. Kemna's question, the idea of sort of creating that open community, open lines of communication. I know that safety is a huge priority for our schools, but I can tell you from a parent perspective that it sometimes feels like it is not approachable. It sometimes feels as though it is not open and receiving to parents who want to be involved. And so there has to be a way that we can kind of balance that we can kind of embrace community and invite them in while still keeping our children safe. I think that would be first and foremost. And then second of all, I think that again, just in transition and what we've learned from COVID, is that we really need usable, sustainable outdoor spaces. And so I know that there are, just like you guys did for the 8th grade dance, how they put up the tents, just like they're building at Turkey Brook, the covered pavilion. I can tell you as a mindfulness teacher, I was looking for so many different like outdoor venues that had good ventilation and lighting. And so I feel as though that might be something that we could potentially look to add to some of the outdoor spaces that we already have the space for, but maybe to create a space for these outdoor parties and these outdoor classrooms and these outdoor lessons to encourage kids to get outside, weather permitting, right? Or it doesn't matter what the weather is. And again, to kind of build on that community.
Very much. Thank you, Ms. Rubin. Ms. Jones will walk into the back and watch the next candidate come out.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Shampy, how are you? Doing well. So we're going to just go round robin, start with Mr. Strachey. At the end, as I explained earlier, after all the candidates are interviewed, the board will go into closed session to discuss the candidates' qualifications, and then we'll come back out and vote on the board members. So Mr. Strachey, start and ask away and
I
answer away.
apologize, I was talking to our attorney. What was your name, sir?
Jason Shanafy.
If you were to be selected to be on the board, what 2 goals would you like to see the board implement?
Well, I would like to see the normalization as best we can after this COVID nightmare that we've been facing. And I think the kids have been subjected to things that kids shouldn't have to be subjected to. I would like to see maybe the masks come off for the children, and I would like to see more of the things that I maybe had as a child, reading, writing, and arithmetic, as opposed to some of the other things that are sweeping the schools of the nation. I think that this school system is one of the best in the state. That's one of the reasons we moved here. Just would like to be institute any policies that can keep us progressively ahead of the curve on. I don't have the information that maybe the board members have. And I don't have the education background maybe as a teacher, but if I had that data, anything that would promote the children in this town and the concerns of the parents of the children in this town, I would like to see would help facilitate those policies.
Yes, in the district, if you could change one thing, what would you do and why?
Like I said, the mask coming off the children, I feel like it's hurting the socialization of the children. That's a big goal of mine. I don't have the data that you might have, but that would be a goal of mine. Getting the kids back to normal in a safe environment.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jason, what do you see or understand to be the board's roles and responsibilities in the school district?
I would think that the board facilitates all the programs that get instituted in the schools, learning curriculums, maybe like sporting curriculums, infrastructure related to that, I would think. Teachers' concerns, I would think.
Thank you.
Okay, what kind of commitment and time and energy do you think a board member needs to devote to be an effective board of education member?
I have no background in Board of Education or any board for that matter, but however much time it takes is what I would feel. I'm retired at the moment, and I have nothing but time, so I give freely.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. My question is, can you share with the board your volunteer activities, whether they are current or past?
My whole life has been volunteering to help my country, my county, the towns I live in. I began serving the day I turned 17 when I enlisted in the United States Army as an infantry paratrooper. I served a tour in Desert Storm. Then following my service in the military, I served as a police officer for 25 years. Morris County Sheriff's on the first half, and then as a patrolman in a town in Somerset County. Following that, my wife was in medical sales, so she traveled a lot, and I became Mr. Mom for the past 5 years, which was infinitely harder in some ways than some of the other jobs that I have to do. But he's currently in CMS, and I'm trying to become more active in the town. I'm on the ballot tomorrow for the 10th District County Committee, and I'm trying to do other things, anything I can do to get involved, to help, because that's been my life thus far.
Thank you.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for your service first.
That was my honor.
As a parent and utilizing your past work experience, what would you consider to be the most important issue facing the board today? And what do you feel you could bring to help to address that issue?
Well, my expertise would be more in security and protecting the children, and if there was policies that would help make a more secure environment, facilities, hardening the facilities against dangers, that would be something that my background would be more geared towards.
And ask a follow-up to that, then what would you see as, what are we missing, or what more should we be addressing utilizing your background?
Well, with all the school systems involved that the board handles, I'm not intimately aware of them all. I'm aware of CMS, where my son goes, and they do a fantastic job. With the security officers that I see, I know some of them personally from my past. So I don't know of any glaring discrepancies that I see, having not been on the inside to be able to evaluate it. From the outside, it looks very good.
That speaks volumes. Thank you.
Oh, it's one of the best I've seen.
Hello. We were looking at a reduction in state aid over the next 5 years. What area would you ask administration to focus on as they plan to address this reduced funding?
As far as raising funds?
How would you handle it? If you get a reduction in state aid, how would you handle it?
If there was any within our community raising of funds, that would be something that I would be interested in doing. For example, it has nothing to do with the school, but I just saw an article in our paper where the VFW for our town is hurting, and they put a little article saying they need help. So I made a point of driving over there and making contact with them and offering to try and help them raise funds, and they ultimately just wanted me to join the VFW, so I did. And, but I think that as a community we could raise funds if that's allowed by law.
Probably is in most instances. But thank you, Jason, appreciate it.
So, hi, Jason. First of all, thank you for your service. 82nd Airborne is a tough unit. Just have one question. What do you think is the biggest challenge or issue with public education right now?
A big issue in public education that, I'm only getting this from the news. Again, I'm not involved in it, but I see a lot of angst between political angst that I think is being put on the children and courses and curriculums that I don't necessarily agree with that. I think kids should have a solid foundation of education and focus on that kind of teaching, but I don't have the data in front of me. Like, I would follow the science, and and the best things for the children and the concerns of the parents. That would be my goal.
Thank you again.
So thank you, Jason. We'll ask you to go back with the other candidates, and then we'll just call out, and then we'll go to closed session like I stated before.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I saw this. I was working on that.
Raise the flag.
Hello, Mr. Petrie, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, sir. So you've been on the board before, we've interviewed candidates. We're just going to go round robin. I'm going to start with Mr. Zier. At the end of, after we interview all the candidates, the board will go into closed session to discuss each candidate's qualifications, and then we'll come back out and we will vote on the board member. So with that being said, I will let Mr. Zier ask the first question.
So thank you for coming back out. I know you ran the last term, and then you're trying to jump back on, so thank you so much for doing that. My question I have is, what do you think is the biggest issue or challenge with New Jersey public education right now?
Excluding COVID?
Excluding COVID.
I think it ties into this, is how are you going to get the entire state to the same level? If you're looking at, we've been really lucky here at Mount Olive. Our kids are in school, but I know there are some districts who haven't been in person. I think last week in Brick, they went back for the first time. So if you're now looking at the state holistically, how is it possible to judge kids from Mount Olive against kids from Brick when they've been operating on two completely separate paradigms? And what are you going to do over the next couple of years to bring everyone back up to that same level?
Thank you very much.
Okay. We're looking at a reduction in state aid over the next 5 years. What area would you ask the administration to focus on as they plan to address the reduced funding?
I think the implementation of zero-based budgeting will help that, because now it will at least let you go in and look at the needs of that year or that coming budget. It would be, I don't think it would be wise for me to say this is where we should look at, because how do you look at the future? If you're looking at any separate grade, how do we know what's coming into that grade? So I would say just keep an eye out for using the zero-based budgeting to see where you have that flexibility, where the funds that are allocated that aren't needed anymore, and make your decisions based on that.
Would like to follow up? Since we already do zero-based budgeting,
Right.
and we don't find anything, where would you go?
Well, there will always, with zero-based budgeting, there will have to be something, because now you're doing every year of, okay, if we're having a reduction in the number of math classes, and I'm just using math as a hypothetical. If you now look at it, okay, we don't need X amount at this program because we're having a reduced amount. Or if you're doing, we no longer need as many classes in history. That's where you can start looking at reducing the funds at that location or in that specialty based on the need. And that's how zero-based budgeting is supposed to be implemented. It's supposed to be saying, okay, we are starting at zero, and now for any funds to go into that, you need to prove that we need funds for that area.
Thank you.
We basically did that before too, and we did have reductions such as that in the number of students. Every year something happened
Right.
where there was more students in one class than another, so we would have to do the reduction for that. That was before, that was before zero-based budgeting. But as far as just, you've been on the board, you've seen different things happen, different things come about, and how we've handled different things. What do you think is an important issue right now that is, besides COVID, that is facing the board? And how would you approach it this time? Being a past board member and possible, how would you approach it?
I think there is a divide in the board, and I think that is due to some level of, either level or lack of communication within the board. And I know Dr. Gales recommended having that board retreat. I think that may take a step, but I think it would be taking a step back, taking a holistic view of what are you all here for, right? I've heard it many times of, let's remember why we're here. Mr. Scalacci said it, like, we're here for the kids and the parents. In that retreat, take that step back. Let's put away egos and remember why you all ran. Like, this wasn't something you were appointed. This was something that you made that purposeful decision to put your name on that application, in that ballot, and sit there and volunteer your time. That's what I would say, is take that step back and really look at why we're all here.
And what was the reason why you were here? Like, what was your approach as far as coming on the board and seeing?
My whole thing started with the lack of communication from when KXL was canceled. I don't think communication was well. The way we found out was a check coming back to us with no notification. Made a post on Facebook, and one of the former board members says, I don't know what communication is, and I took it as an affront because I was a project manager, and project management is 90% communication. So I said, if this is their idea of communication, maybe I'll be able to help. So that's why I originally came in, and I enjoyed my time on the board, and my kids are still young, the 3rd grader and the 5th grader. They're gonna need a lot of support for the next decade. And I want to say, I think I have decent ideas. I think I'm, yes, I have ego, everyone does, but I think I try to be collaborative and do what's best for the kids.
I think it's like I always said, I don't have 4 children, I have 5,000 children. But
Hi. My question is, can you share with the board your volunteer activities, whether current or past?
I am a current coach for the track rec team. I coach the 13 to 15-year-old boys, and at times when we don't have coaches, the 13 to 15-year-old girls come in. So that's my current volunteering, and I was involved in the Cub Scouts. So my son was part of Pack 47 and 747. And I would go into meetings, I'd help out in camping trips, building the bird houses and such. So those are really my volunteerism.
Thank you.
Okay. My question really doesn't apply to you, so I'm going to change it up. Okay. With everything going on, obviously with COVID and all the other mental health issues that we've seen throughout the school district, the state, the country, everywhere,
Yep.
how effective do you think our district has been in easing student stress?
I can only speak from my personal experience because I really haven't had any interaction with anyone other than my kids. I know that, at least for Mountain View, they've done a good job. The stress levels, it's only if the children are going to speak on what's stressing them out. We're not mind readers. How are you going to really understand that? And that's where I think it needs to be a combination between the parents and the board. Because as a parent myself, like, I don't know always what's making my son or daughter grumpy. Are they acting out just because they're tired? So I think as great of a job as the board and the administration can do, you can't solve it yourself. It does need that parental and administration job to really help the kids.
Thanks.
So you were fortunate enough, if you say fortunate enough, to be on the Board of Ed, so you should know this answer pretty well. What is the board's role and responsibilities in the school district?
Is the oversight. That, Dr. Zawicki and his staff administer the district. We are there to make sure you're there to make sure things don't go off the rails and have that oversight of what's going on.
Mr. Peacher.
Mr. Kemna.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
So you were on the board for a number of years, you've taken a little sabbatical. What one thing in this district, you come back fresh, relaxed, what one thing would you change and why?
It comes back for the original reason I ran, communication. We are doing a much better job, but how do we reach the parents who are not on social media? How do we reach the parents who are not involved? We're all extremely busy. Like, what you decide has a huge impact on parents and children. I think it's better than it was, but there aren't people who aren't on Twitter. There are people who aren't on Facebook. What steps can we do to ensure that the entire district understands and is aware of what is going on in the schools?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mr. Petrie, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm okay, I think. If you were to get back on the board, what 2 board goals would you like to see implemented?
Again, it's going to come back to having communication. That is, as I said, I was a project manager before I was working at Verizon. Communication is 90% of the role. So how do we communicate in a way where we're not surprised? And how do we communicate within the board where there's no surprises? So better communication first. And I'm going to totally steal from my role what I do. I've always been impressed, and when I would go and travel and teach the design thinking and agile, and people were amazed that we were teaching this from 3rd grade, from kindergarten, with the growth mindset, with the design thinking in middle school and the high school. They always said, this is a private school. Like, no, it's a public school. That's where the industry is going. We need to ensure that our children are ready for what's coming. So with that growth mindset, with agile, with design thinking, how it's permeating business, what can we do to ensure that we are preparing our students for what's coming? I think that the board has done an amazing job, and I'm excluding myself from that because you took a lot of steps to where we are now. I was not involved in that. So I think you've done an amazing job, but what's next? That's what you need to prepare students for, is that next wrinkle. Things that were like woodshop, as important. I took 3 years of woodshop, as important as that was 20 years ago. What's going to be the thing in the next 20 years we need to get our students ready?
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Petrie. We'll actually way in the back.
Thank you.
Ms. Jones is our last candidate, correct?
Yes.
Hello. How are you, sir?
Very good. How you guys doing?
Doing well, doing well. So the way we're just going to, and how do I pronounce your last name again?
BoE.
BoE. I always just pronounce it wrong. That's why I want to make sure. That's why I didn't say hello, Mr. BoE. We're just going to go round robin around the table. Each board member asks a question. We're going to start with Mr. Schillaci. Once we're done, we'll actually ask you to sit out here, and we'll have the other candidates come out. The board will go into the back to discuss each candidate's qualification. So turn it over to you, Mr. Schillaci.
Mr. Foley, thank you for wanting to dedicate your time to the Board of Ed. If you become a member of the Board of Ed, what 2 goals would you like to see the board implement?
2 goals that I would like to see the board implement. Well, I found out recently that we don't have a connection with the transportation department in town. Those buses have not on the Board of Education on them, but we don't have a direct link to them, basically, from what I understand. And I would like to see that, have more of a contact with the transportation department. I think that's imperative because I did have a few issues with it, and it took a while to get rectified. So that would be definitely something I would like to see.
you have another one?
Oh, well, the other one would be just stay on top of programs for kids. I think kids need to be programmed, they need programs, they need to be focused on different things in their lives, because it's so easy to get out of focus right now with everything that's going on. We're finally coming out of COVID, hopefully, knock wood, and I think it's just to keep them focused on schoolwork and to want to go to school. I talk to a lot of kids who play a lot of baseball, and they're not interested in school. We need to get them focused back into school.
Thank you. Mr. Bowley, again, thank you for coming out here. Out of our district, not sure how long you've been here, but what one thing would you change in our district, our school district, and why?
Okay, I've been here since 2017. I'll be here 4 years. We moved in the week before Christmas in 17. And the school district, from what I see, from what I experienced, my son went to Mountain View, has been exceptional. I mean, my son has an IEP. The program you guys have implemented for IEPs is fantastic. It's very hands-on. It's goal-oriented, and he's actually progressed immensely. We came from a different district, and he was sort of like stagnant. This district has a lot of good people working in that department, and I like that, and I think we should keep that moving in the district.
So what would you change?
I wouldn't change anything, to be honest with you. I really think the district is running well. I mean, like from the half a year that we've been in middle school, making the transition from Mountain View to middle school has been exceptional. I didn't think it was going to be that good from talking to people, neighbors and stuff. But it actually has been really good. I mean, other than, I talked about the transportation thing, but I really don't think you guys are moving in the wrong direction. I think you guys are in the right direction moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. If you spread that around a little bit more, that'd be very helpful. But appreciate your honesty with that. And in education, everyone has a different experience, right? So maybe your neighbors didn't have the best experience that you had. That could very well be true.
Sure.
So what do you see the board's role and responsibility in the school district, the entire board?
The entire board in the district? We have to look at the district as a whole, every school, every facility that we have, and keep it focused. Again, keep kids focused. That's my main thing in life, is focus, keep them moving forward, and don't let things go by the wayside. Focus on everything, all aspects. I'm a recreation director, so I focus on sports. I think sports is a great outlet for kids in school, associated with school. I think schools have a great opportunity to keep kids focused. I think sports is a big thing. I'm not a big fan of gaming or anything like that, but I mean, it's here and we live with it, and there's nothing we can do about it. I know firsthand there's nothing we can do about it. As an 11-year-old son, we do the best we can with it. I just think that we just have to stay focused.
Thank you.
Okay. What kind of commitment and time and energy do you think a board member needs to devote in order to be an effective board member?
It's a big commitment. It's a thankless job. I was a board member for 3 years at Seacaucus back in 2003. So it's a major commitment. While I was there, we did 2 additions on 2 grammar schools, and we built a 1,000-seat performing arts center at the high school, which was huge. It was a big commitment. We did that in 3 years. We had all 3 things done. I mean, it's day and night. You're reading a lot of stuff. You're going over a lot of paperwork, and you're going to meetings, and it's a commitment. But you have to want to do it, and it's not something that I can't do. Nothing that I don't want to do. It's something that I know needs to be done. If you want to do it, you do it right.
Thank you.
Hi. My question is, can you share with the board your volunteer activities, whether current or past?
I volunteered, I coached for many years in the recreation programs. Even though I was the director, I still coached. I volunteered to coach football, I coached baseball, basketball, softball. I have 3 older kids, so I coached them all. And now I have an 11-year-old from a different marriage, second marriage. and it's happening all over again. And I just commit a lot of time to basically sports. I mean, I do volunteer, like to the senior services in my town. As I said, I'm a recreation director, so we do a lot of senior work, and it's still time consuming. I have a good staff that puts everything together, so and then we just go in, you know, we just try to stay with the public. We try to help everyone with the public, and it's a volunteer part of my job. I don't get paid for it. I work nights, weekends, just like, but try to space your time out. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm sweating so much this morning. Plus I put my jacket on.
Hopefully we're not making you sweat.
No, it's just warm.
Hi, John. I did read your resume, and you did serve previously, as you had just stated,
Yes.
as the Caucus Board of Ed, so you have a little bit of knowing what goes on with Board of Ed and, what your role is with it. You talk about, as far as focusing, to have something for students for focusing, you compliment, which we appreciate, our Special Services Department, which is always good to hear. But besides all of that, is there something that you would consider an issue that's currently facing the district or the board that is something that maybe we're not addressing right now or should be addressed? And utilizing your background, how would you address that issue?
And from experience, and I've had a little bit of experience with the district, and again, I'm going to revert back to sports. I think the middle school sports programs are good. I think they should be looked at a little bit more, maybe, as far as functionality, moving forward, because I did have first-hand experience with it this year. The grammar schools I think they're on target. I think the staff is great. I mean, I have only dealt with that, obviously, because that's what this is at. But moving forward, I think the district is in a good spot. I mean, COVID, hopefully it's going away. And I know Dr. Zawicki is up against it with the mask issue, with everything. But I mean, there's only 2 weeks left of school. I know he's struggling with that last bit of information with the masks, and I'm sure he'll come up with the right plan for it. I think the district is doing a good job. He's doing a very good job from what I understand, from what I see. And I think it's all in a positive way. I really think this district is really good. I mean, coming out of Sequoia, it was a great district. We had a good business administrator, we had a good superintendent, and it worked well. And that's what I see happening here. I think you guys are moving in the right direction with the superintendent, with, the administration. I think it's moving in the right direction. And I'd like to be part of it.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Did you purposefully move to Mount Olive?
Yes, we did actually, because we looked around all over the place. And we looked at the school district, and the school district is really high in the state and nationally. It is, and it was one of the reasons that we did move here. And now, when I saw this spot come up, I said, I'm going to take a shot. I mean, I still don't know if I'm going to run in November, if I'm up in the air about it. I think I want to. Whether I'm going to, I'm not sure yet. And I don't know if I go for the 1 year. I'd probably go for the 3 years, if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible. Yeah. But right now, that's where I am.
Thank you very much.
Hi, John. We're looking at a reduction in state aid over the next 5 years. What area would you ask the administration to focus on as they plan to address this reduced funding?
On the state level you're talking, right? State funding? It has to come from internal. It has to come, can't be staff. It could be staff to a point, but not major staff. It can't be programs. I'm dead against that. You have to figure out where to get money for programs and keep everything moving forward. Because without programs, education falls a little short. You need to have a diversified operation in the board, in the school system. You have it here. Hopefully, it doesn't have to be reduced by that much. There's got to be other places that we can find a reduction. I'm sure with a little due diligence, I think it can be found. I just don't think it can be programs, and it can't be education. It can't be staff. It can't be anything. It has to come from somewhere else, and I don't know where that have to be something that would be looked at by Ms. Whitney and the committee, whatever committee would have to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Wilkie, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. I have a question, is what is the most important issue or challenge in public education in New Jersey that New Jersey is facing right now?
In my opinion, the most important thing that New Jersey is facing is the reduction in state aid. And it's something that has to be addressed, I think, on a higher level, not just, I think we have to go to the governor, and it has to come from the governor's office to address these concerns. It can't just be take the money away. It has to be, but everybody has to stay unified. All the districts have to stay unified and go to the governor and just talk something. He has to, you can't take the money away. There's money all over this state. You just have to get it into education. And I know it's a political ball that's out there, and it just can't happen. It has to be unified in all the districts. Hopefully, we can get to the governor's office and change that direction that it's going, because you can't take money away. You can't. It's impossible. Because where are you taking it from? There's nowhere to take it from. If you look at everything that happens in schools, they're on bare minimums right now. And staff, and you need staff. If you have good staff, you have good education. You have good programs, you have good education. And it has to start at the governor's office.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bowley. So at this time, we just ask you to sit, if we want to ask all the candidates to come out now?
Yeah, you might as well ask them to come in, and we're gonna go in the other room.
Well, we have to open up the public comments, and when the public can,
They can come back here.
yeah, they come out here, So at this time, members of the community, you have the opportunity to comment on the appointment of the prospective candidates prior to board discussion. So just stand up, state your name and address, and ask about any one of the candidates. Or make a statement. Closing the public comment line. Resolved that the board meet in confidential session for the purpose of selecting a board member, and be it further resolved, the matters discussed in confidential session be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality no longer exists.
Just to be clear, the resolution should say to discuss the qualifications of the
Yes,
candidates,
I'm
not to select a candidate.
Right, and action will be taken. It will be 6.1, and then we have another resolution the board has to pass, 6.2, that I will read into the record when the time comes. Motion to go into closed session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go into closed session.
And you'll need a second for what's on the agenda.
For 6-1, yeah, for 6-1 and 6-2, yeah. So motion to come back in from confidential session?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Back in confidential session. Public, well, I said coming back. All right, thank you. I'd like to take the time to thank all the candidates who came out. This is the first time in a long time since we had an opening on the board where we actually had 5 people coming out to interview for the position. Usually it's 1 or 2. If that, like sometimes 1. So I'd like to encourage all the candidates, if you're not voted or elected, for the board to be on the Board of Ed now for this expired term for January. We'd like to encourage you all to run, whether this year or next year or the year after, stay involved, come to board meetings, and just the more diversity or more opinions we hear or have diverse people on the board, I think it's better for the Board of Ed. So I'd like to encourage everyone. Right now, I'd like to take nominations for to fill the vacancy.
I'd like to make a nomination for the vacancy of the board, and I'd like to nominate Mr. John Petrie. Second.
I don't need a second. Any other nominations? Okay, next. Motion to close nominations, Lynn. Ms. Cohen, would you move action item 6.1?
Sure, motion to move action item 6.4?
6.1.
6.1.
Second.
With the name of Mr. Petrie.
Approve the appointment of John Petrie as a member of the Mount Olive Township Board of Education, effective immediately to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of former board member Nolan Stevens.
Second.
Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Lynn.
Mrs. Cohen?
Yes.
Dr. Gales?
Yes.
Mr. Kemna?
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Petrie. I'd like to read action item 6.2. Resolved that the Board of Education retain the services of David Rubin Esquire to conduct an independent investigation at the hourly rate of $180 an hour, not to exceed $10,000 without further authorization from the Board of Education.
Need a motion and a second?
Make the motion. Second.
Questions or comments from the board?
This is when you're going to abstain. I was going to say.
Mr. Kemna?
Yes.
Mrs. Wimett?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Strelacci?
Abstain.
Mr. Zire?
Yes.
Mrs. Cohen?
Yes.
Dr. Gales?
Abstain.
And Dr. Giordano?
Yes. We can do the, you want to swear?
Go.
Yeah, you want to swear Mr. Petrie? Mr. Petrie, would you come forward to take your oath?
Who's taking pictures?
Would you like to, Mr. Zire?
No,
Since
I
you
have,
a
this
good
is like
angle there?
this, I have to, it's like a Polaroid, I have to like, wave and flip phone, that's how old it is.
You want to-
Thank you, Mr. Bowens. Thank you,
Are
Mr.
we ready, Mr. President? Dr. President?
Yes.
Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, John Petrie,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will
to the governments established in the United States
and to the governments established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I state your name.
I, John Petrie,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
that I possess the qualifications
prescribed by law
prescribed by law
for the office of Member of the Board of Education,
for the office of the member of the Board of Education,
and that I'm not disqualified as a voter
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to
pursuant to
RS
RS
19:4-1,
19:4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime,
nor
justly
and that I will faithfully, partially, and justly
perform all the duties of that office
perform the duties of that office
according to the best.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.